Thank you, Dean Marchick. How's everybody? Standing room only today for the Sustainability Series. Welcome to yet another wonderful event celebrating Earth Day and American University's commitment to sustainability. Today, if you can believe it, is the semester's last Gamechangers and Sustainability Speaker Series, a series organized by the Kogod School of Business and the Sine Institute of Policy and Politics. I'm Amy Dacey. I'm the Executive Director of the Sine Institute, and I am delighted to introduce you to today's outstanding panel of women entrepreneurs. So Sara Polon is the co-founder of Soupergirl, Nicole McGrew is the founder of Threadleaf, and Monica Pearce is the founder of Tenth Ward Distilling Company. These incredible entrepreneurial women are building a more sustainable world through business, something the Kogod School of Business is deeply dedicated to. And they join an impressive lineup of speakers we have hosted this year, including Seth Goldman, who's the co-founder of Honest Tea, and Tony Capuano, the president and CEO of Marriott International. Before I introduce you to today's moderator, I do want to take a moment and thank Alan and Amy Meltzer. This event, part of the Alan Meltzer CEO Speaker Series, just simply wouldn't be possible without their generous support. And I also want to recognize the members of the Kogod Advisory Council and the Kogod Sustainability Council who are joining us today. Thank you for your support and for being here. And congratulations, Dean Marchick, for building an incredible advisory group to work with this program. So let's give them a round of applause. It is also my honor to introduce today's panel moderator, Danielle Vogel. Danielle joined Kogod's Management Department faculty this year. Her classes focus on the intersection between entrepreneurship and sustainability. She also serves as the assistant director of the AU Center for Innovation. And prior to joining our faculty, she founded and operated a climate change motivated grocery store called Glenn's Garden Market in DuPont Circle. Glenn's was beloved locally and recognized nationally as a leader in sustainability and innovation. She sold the business in 2021, but through Glenn's, Danielle helped to launch over 90 local food businesses, of which more than 50 were women-owned and nearly 25 were founded by people of color. She also founded a pitch competition called Accelerate Her DC to identify, incubate, and accelerate, I love this, lady-led local businesses, and which were making significant and actionable sustainability commitments. Before founding Glenn's, Danielle worked to pass comprehensive climate legislation as a staff to both the Democrats and the Republicans in the House and Senate. She also served as a trial attorney with the Environmental Enforcement Section of the U.S. Department of Justice. In addition to teaching at Kogod School of Business, Danielle also teaches at the Washington College of Law. She earned her BA at Tufts University and her JD from Washington College of Law. So let me turn it over to you, Danielle, one of our proud Eagles. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all so much for being here today. We really appreciate your excitement about sustainability. Happy Erev Earth Day, day before the big day. Couldn't be more excited. So Sara, let me introduce my friends to you. I'd love for you to be as impressed by them as I have been. Sara did not set out to start a food company. But the more you learned about how broken our food system was, the more committed you became to trying to fix it. So in a triple twist, you moved home from New York, gave up your career in stand-up, and started a vegan soup company with your mom.
It's the setup for a joke.
You got to crack the jokes, dude. You're the comic. And so in the years since 2011, when you launched Soupergirl.
2008.
Even better. You have sold a lot of soup, but more importantly, you've really made an impact on our supply chain. You treat your customers, your employees, and your entire extended ecosystem with respect. And I really look forward to sharing those details with our friends and community today.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
And Monica started out in the environmental movement. You studied environmental science. You have a master's degree in natural resources. And then in 2016, you founded a distillery. which is pretty neat. So now, a couple of years later, you're running a nearly 20,000 square foot production facility with a tasting room and a cocktail bar, and you're embedding that commitment to environmentalism and sustainability in everything you do for your business, which is an amazing story to share, especially on the day before Earth Day.
Yeah, thanks.
And Nicole McGrew, what don't you do? She's unbelievable. So Nicole founded a sustainability-oriented clothing boutique called Threadleaf. She's also a lawyer with a master's degree, and she's a master gardener, an amateur botanist, a runner. She worked in the Obama White House and the Department of Justice. You are insatiably curious, and you are a real change-making powerhouse. And I can't wait for us to dive into the details of that story. So thank you guys for being here today. We're just thrilled and honored to have you. Thank you. So let's start with you, Nicole, if you're up for it. All right, so here at AU, we teach our students that entrepreneurs are curious problem solvers. And you, my friend, are insatiably curious. So I was hoping you could share a little bit about how your drive to learn and grow has served you in your entrepreneurial endeavors.
Sure. So I think even from a very young age, I've always wanted to learn more things, always never really pigeonholed, was always interested in this and this and this. Even when I was practicing law, it was one of those things that I thought made you a very good lawyer, to always be curious. You know, I started out doing antitrust, and I knew nothing about semiconductors. I worked on a bunch of semiconductor deals, had to learn that industry, worked in different types of technologies. I learned about seeds, all sorts of things. So I think that just my personality has always been geared towards learning new things and having new challenges. How it fit in with entrepreneurship was that, the challenge to me was finding responsibly made and sustainably made clothing. And I was looking at all these different designers, trying to find them, and a lot of them are really small, really niche, hard to, find. And I thought, okay, well, if this is a problem for me, then this is probably a problem for other women too. And so it was that curiosity of thinking about, well, where are these designers? Where can I find them? And thinking other folks might have that same issue that led me to think, okay, this might be an interesting business idea to pursue. Oh, okay. I'm sure that's all. Does that?
This makes perfect sense. Thank you. Monica, I'd love to move to you. So you and I both got our start in the environmental movement. Formative times indeed. So I'm wondering, and I'm going to let you choose your own adventure on this one.
Sure.
So
I like that.
Two choices. Number one, which lessons did you learn in sort of the environmental movement that you think would be helpful in running your business? And or which lessons have you learned while running your business that you think it would suit the environmental movement to learn?
Sure. I don't know if it was a lesson or more of a challenge I faced. So I was raised by hippie, earth-loving parents. We were vegetarians. We love the earth. We love being outside. I've always been passionate about leaving the earth beautiful for anybody else coming behind us. And so that's been the forefront of at least when I was studying, thought of my pathway. And I started to realize that certain pathways also took a lot of doom and gloom in terms of like how you had to learn about things and explain things to people. I'm sure any climate scientist or somebody studying climate in the room, that's the hardest. And I almost went down that path because you almost have to explain unquantifiable things about what's happening. And so I had to figure out how to enjoy what I was doing and show that I was having an impact. And I think that was a challenge for me early on in understanding the direction I wanted to go in. And so that's why I ended up gearing more toward data science and specific research and work that I could do one thing and get to another. So props to those that really have to make that pitch every time. And then once I made that transition to distilling, what was cool about it was I kept thinking, okay, what are all the things that we can do to be eco-friendly? Light bulbs, locally sourcing, all of this stuff. And then I realized what we did was already, if you put the right things in place, easily sustainable. So we source all of our grain locally. We can use whiskey as an example of all the products that we manufacture. We support local agriculture, so we use a very small amount of greenhouse gases when it comes to the delivery and the production of what we utilize. And then our spent grain, which is the byproduct of what we make, goes to a farmer who feeds all of our spent grain to their cattle. It's donated to them, so their entire cattle stock is able to be fed off of us making liquor, which is kind of funny. And then otherwise, any other waste that we really produce is cardboard from packaging items, cases that hold bottles and labels and bags and stuff like that. And so I spent all of this time trying to figure out other ways that I realized didn't have as much of an impact of just physically making sure that our waste went to the right place, and that feels pretty cool. But I also try to think about sustainability in other ways too, like how we become a sustainable business from our practices and making sure our staff are happy and we're giving back to the community and the economy and stuff like that.
I'll give you a chance to get back to that.
Yeah,
thought
that's
in a
fine.
few
Yeah,
minutes.
I can go.
Thanks
to
for
that
setting
later.
us up.
Yeah.
All right, Sara, as we know too well, retail requires a sense of humor. And in great news, you're a stand-up comic. So in some ways, you've been training your whole life for this job. Can you share an anecdote about a time when your sense of humor served you particularly well in retail? Oh, God.
Oh, wow. That wasn't a question I was anticipating. Yeah, okay. A time my sense of humor served me well. In retail. There's so many. I mean, I think that, yeah, so we just moved into a new production facility this week. So I'm really running on a ton of sleep. And we have a lot of equipment. It takes some really big equipment. Actually, we just laughed about this. It takes some really big equipment to make a lot of soup. You have to have big soup wells, and then you have to chill them, and the chillers they're like 6,000 pounds. And I was sharing in the back that my threshold for moving, you were saying, did it go well? I said, yes, well, nobody died. And that's where we're at. And you were like, that's the bar. And I'm like, that's the bar. and there were certain points, like on day 2, when there were men crossing themselves before lifting things up. And I'm like, today might be the day that doesn't happen, in that someone does die, but they didn't. And then at the end of the day, you have to laugh that is your threshold. And the fact of the matter is, when you're doing this, when you're building a small business, you might give off the reputation that you're just like, sitting in your big corner office counting dollar bills, when in fact you're helping lift a 6,000-pound piece of machinery because you don't want someone to die.
Because that's what the day takes.
That is sometimes what the day takes. Yeah.
So I actually have a question for you from one of our students, Rhea Roberts. So she was interested in the fact that you started your business with your mom and was hoping you could share a bit about sort of the dynamics of managing that relationship.
Yeah, so it's important to remember that a Jewish woman is always right. And when there's 2 Jewish women in the room, the mother 100% of the time is right. And in the beginning, I would kind of fight her a little bit on like, I don't think we should do this. I don't, and then I would get a look that if you have a Jewish mother, that look, it's with an eyebrow and just nothing needs to be said. And I was like, you're right. And I apologize. And once we got through that, it was great. And no one should ask of their mother what I asked of mine. But the truth is, having someone who's been around longer, we should respect these people. She just knows more than me about life and people and just what people want. And so once you really understand that, and we don't get stuck in but I've been reminded more than one time, hey, I didn't grow up with computers. I didn't grow up with the internet. And so when I have to explain that you don't need to take a picture of the computer screen and email it. You just appreciate it. You just appreciate it. And I'm grateful every day. I'm grateful every day for her and her recipes, because all of these soups are her recipes. So thank goodness for her prowess in the kitchen.
Amazing. Monica, I'm going to give you a chance to follow up on a train of thought you started already. So we talk a lot in our entrepreneurship classes about the importance of resilience, the big R in entrepreneurship. So obviously, COVID called us all to task on that trait in a big way. And I'm wondering if you could share a bit about how you went about balancing financial sustainability with environmental sustainability when it felt like the sky was falling.
Sure. That's a really good question. And I like the word resilience too, because I think sustainability, sometimes you think about sustainability from an environmental standpoint, but like you said, I think it goes beyond that. So COVID was hard for us. We were shut down. We did everything. We made hand sanitizer and surface disinfectant, and we sold it to everybody from the housewives down the street to the Navy, the news stations, whoever needed it, and we tried to make the price as affordable as possible. So I think that was where we were at that time, and we were still able to function in the same way that we did by making sure that our staff were also happy and okay and engaged, and we did a lot of mental health checks because we were considered essential at the time. So we were going through that, and it was kind of crazy. We just transitioned the entire operation of what we already did over to surface disinfectant production and any sort of to-go sales that we could manufacture. The other thing that we did, which was cool, was we were selling to-go cocktails, and we were putting them in these little Tupperware containers and putting nice little labels on them, and they would leak, and we kind of got whatever we could at the time. And then I felt like that was not sustainable in everything, in the packaging and the way that it was running. And so that's when we launched our canned cocktail program. So that's what we call the RTD, the ready to drink. And that's been a whole other arm of the business, which was a pretty neat thing that came out of COVID for us. And I think that we've been able to continue our sustainable practices with that revenue stream as well. So proud of it.
Should be.
Yeah, thanks.
So speaking of resilience and COVID pivot fests, which all of us navigated, Nicole, Threadleaf is an amazing tale of resilience. You pivoted a number of times. You did, traditional brick and mortar retail. You did e-com. You did pop-ups. And I'm wondering if you could talk us through your process for deciding when it was time to pivot.
Sure. Right. So, everything was shut down in March of 20, right? And that was a year after I had just signed a lease onto a larger, larger space. So that first year in the new space went great. Yes. And then, we were closed for a while because clothing stores are not deemed essential. So we were just not doing anything for a while. And then we started doing appointments. I mean, one good thing about the larger space was that people could feel more comfortable in there. My first space was really tiny. And so you could have two people. It was usually like a mother and a daughter or two friends or something that would come in. And we would just do appointments. And so that was the first pivot once we reopened. It was just appointment shopping. We did that for a while. And at the same time, we beefed up the e-commerce because when I first opened, I didn't have an online presence at all. I just sort of had Instagram, and you could sort of see what was in the store, but you had to come in because that was part of the philosophy. I wanted people to really feel the textiles and feel the quality of the material, and I thought you couldn't really, you can't get that online. And so we had to switch to e-commerce because there was no other way to get into the store. Then it was appointments. And so then we sort of did this hybrid of in-store and online for a while until my lease in my bigger space expired. Because when that lease expired, the market still hadn't really recovered. People weren't really out and about yet, and it just didn't seem to be a wise move to renew this lease with so much uncertainty still. And so then I was exclusively online, but also doing appointments. By this point, I had a lot of customers that I had a really good rapport with, and so they would just email me, and I would essentially do like sort of mini trunk shows, and I would just, I knew them, I knew their sizes, I knew what they liked. They would say, I want to see these two things, but I would bring a few more things because I just kind of knew what they wanted. And so I would just go to people's houses. Sometimes we would be on the deck, sometimes I would be in the house, and we would do that for a while. And that also transitioned to helping them with some of the things they had. And so it wasn't necessarily just selling new things to them, but helping them maybe find one piece that matched with something they had. Because separate from COVID, I was having even though the shop was focused on sustainability and responsibly made clothing, it's still consumption. And so, going to shows every few months and having to find something new or get it was sort of wearing on me a bit. And so it was a good time. Not that I would have wished this, obviously, but it did give me time to sort of reflect on that as well, because a lot of my shows were canceled. They weren't meeting at trade centers. And so it gave me time to think about, well, is this the model that I really want to pursue long term? And so that was the other pivot that was doing that. And then at the same time, I was training for my Master Gardener certification. I've always loved gardening since I was a kid, but this was like sort of taking it up a notch. And then I started doing, not really classes, but I was working with people in that aspect as well, and helping them with gardening. I added a whole gardening section to the store, which I didn't have before. And so that was a way to bridge the sort of having a shop and selling things, but it was things that were making the world better. And so that was a lot of fun. And so that it's been this whole journey of sort of figuring out what is working at the moment, but still trying to keep that thread of like, what is the essence of the business and what is the underlying mission?
I think you summarized that really nicely. You've got to stay true to the mission and the values while you navigate difficulties in the marketplace and ensure you are sort of consistently trying to find product market fit even when the market keeps shifting. Thank you for that. Sara, let's go to you next. So we've been there for each other through some times.
Yeah.
Through some staff silliness, through some money trouble, through some growing pains. And the fact of the matter is 100% of entrepreneurs fail, even the ones who are wildly successful. That is simply a truism of being a professional risk taker. So can you tell us a story about a time that you failed and learned from it?
Pick the day.
Yeah.
I think we made a lot of decisions. Yeah, there really is. As an entrepreneur, we didn't expect Soupergirl to grow the way it did. We didn't expect it to become what it became, and which is wonderful, but also very scary. And I often made decisions reactively, not proactively. And I made some really, really bad hiring decisions based on desperation. And they really hurt the business.
I've been there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We all have.
Right. And hurt some friendships and hurt the business and lost respect from some of my team. And now I have a team that's I'm really excited about. And it's taken a long time to get here, but I can never hear that enough of Me Too Been There, because you also, as the CEO, it is so lonely. It is it is profoundly isolating. No one will really have the guts to tell you when you're doing something wrong unless you have a board. They don't have a problem telling you. But your team, they're not going to tell you until it's gone too far. And then also, if you do something great, no one's going to say, hey, great job leading us through this.
Yep.
But I do feel it took me a little too long, but now I really understand how to hire, what we need, and the desperation will pass. You will get through this. If you're in the through, and this is really for life, if you're in the through, understand you're in the through, and it's not going to last forever, and you will get here. And you can't go back here. And so if you're in a real desperate situation, don't make big decisions, especially hiring ones.
Heard that, Chef. Thank you.
Yeah.
So Monica, you're kind of breaking some ground. There are certainly other female distillers in the world, some very good ones, but the list is pretty short. So either intentionally or simply implicitly, you're role modeling for women that may want to follow in your footsteps. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about some of the ways that you intentionally prepare other women to succeed.
Thank you for that question. That's important to me, especially because when we started out, it's not something I had thought about before when I was starting a distillery, specifically focused on whiskey, but we make other products, that people would identify us as a woman-owned business in an industry that's not normally woman-owned. Sometimes I would get a lot of questions. I felt like in the beginning, I wasn't really seen as an expert in my field. I was questioned a lot, or even, didn't make sales because I was a woman to certain clients. And then I got some cool feedback. Every once in a while when I was doing a tasting or working an event, I would get customers that were saying, this is really cool that this is woman-owned. And I never really took the bull by the horns until a couple of years in when I started to realize that it was something that I could also utilize. So we started to use the Whiskey Woman term, which I have on my shirt here, as a part of our branding. Obviously, Whiskey Woman isn't something that we coined ourselves, but we use it in hashtags. We put it on T-shirts with our logo, and a lot of our customers get pumped about it, both female and male customers. It's become a cool sales pitch. We all tattooed it on our arms on our 5-year anniversary.
Whoa.
Me and a whole bunch of employees of mine, I paid for all their tattoos. It was a fun day. So yeah, I'm all about the brand, if you can't tell. But the reason I'm passionate about it, especially, is because I want to provide opportunities to women, to minorities, different types of people that were never really seen or valued as experts in our field, just because it was usually a man's world. And that's how distilling, the whiskey industry in general, was seen. And so I give opportunities to all of my employees, but I also make sure that I'm fostering their growth. So we give them 50% of their bonus, of all of my employees' bonuses, revolves around how much training they take on. So if they take on so many required hours of training a year, which is a part of their professional development, they get so much of a percent of their pay. And so I encourage them to develop themselves and to grow, and I want to provide opportunities for them. If I can afford to send them to conferences, to other types of, whatever it might be, webinars, podcasts, those types of things. I want my staff to feel confident in what they're doing, but also to be seen as, super bomb whiskey ladies.
That deserves applause. That's awesome. Way to go.
Thanks.
Nicole, I hope you'll forgive me for negligently failing to mention in my introduction of you that you have recently been named the very first Black woman president of the Alexandria Chamber of Commerce.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. And as those of us who do business in this neck of the woods know, Alexandria is perennially named the best city in America for small business. And we have a number of AU student-led ventures making their way through our business incubator here at the Valoric Center for Entrepreneurship. So I was wondering if you had 2 minutes to make a pitch to an aspiring business owner thinking about locating in Alexandria, how would you attract them to your city?
Ooh.
Well, we have a nice base of residents who really do like to shop local and who do, I guess it depends on your business, but we have a lot of folks in Alexandria who live in Alexandria and who support Alexandria. And they're very happy to support businesses that are in Alexandria, local businesses, irrespective of what they do. So that's one thing. I think that, oh, you said 2 minutes, not two things. Okay.
No, just as pithy as you can be.
And then I think the business community is very supportive there. Even folks who ostensibly would be your competitor, I find that they're still willing to share tips, share expertise. If you're looking for where to get your bags printed or who's a good, one of the things that's always a concern is cleaning the snow in front of your shop, especially if it's a really small business. So those types of connections, I find that the business owners in Alexandria are really, really helpful and community-minded. So we have our good customer base, community-minded businesses that are willing to help, and then also just the proximity to DC, but Alexandria also sort of being its own city, I think is really nice as well. And then our chamber, and I'd be remiss to not mention the chamber. It's a great asset for folks. We advocate on behalf of businesses within the city and also businesses that do business in the city but aren't actually located in the city, and provide networking opportunities. I live in Alexandria. I purposely opened in Alexandria because I just love it there, and so I'm always willing to talk to anyone who's interested in doing anything in Alexandria. So it's just a great place.
Awesome. Thank you. So Sara, if I were to create a highlight reel of the biggest wins in sustainable food production in the last year, your work to get the tomatoes in your gazpacho Fair Food Program certified would make that reel. Can you tell us a little bit about the program and why it was so important to you to pursue it?
Yeah, and stop me because I can go on for a long time. But in short, I learned during COVID, we had also had to do crazy stuff. Being deemed essential was very, very weird feeling. And I would imagine we had very different COVID experiences than a lot of folks
civilians
did. Yeah, the whole staying home all day in your pajamas. I was home less during the height of COVID than I ever was in my life because I wasn't going to ask my team to defy CDC orders and then I would just hang out at home in my PJs. And so, making sure I protected my team became an obsession. And then I started realizing I don't know really what's going on with the items that are coming in to our facility, and through a number of connections, I just reading, the first article was about how the meat industry that was deemed essential, the slaughterhouses and the meat packing, but these facilities were not doing anything to protect their people, and people were dying for our hamburgers, and that just it destroyed me to know that was. I always said I wanted to disrupt the food system, but I was like, we're literally sending people to their death. And so through a number of connections, I got introduced to the Coalition of Immokalee Workers. And basically it's a group of farm laborers in Immokalee, Florida that many, many years ago stood up and said, enough with you beating us in the fields, not protecting us from sexual assault, not paying us, not giving us water. They just said enough. And that grew into the Fair Food Program many years later. And this amazing group of people got retailers such as Ahold, which owns Giant and Stop and Shop and Walmart and McDonald's, to agree to purchase tomatoes from farms that signed on to the program. And the farms that signed on to the program basically agreed to say, okay, we're going to protect our team. We're going to provide protections for our workers that you would think are just the norm. Access to a bathroom, access to some shade, and again, protection from horrors beyond your wildest imagination, like being locked in a walk-in freezer when people from immigration services come. And so I worked together with the Fair Food Program. They'd worked with retailers and small casual concepts, but I worked together with them for a year to develop the standards for CPG products. CPG is consumer packaged goods. If you go to the store and you buy a tomato gazpacho, or if it's a bottle of something, it's a consumer packaged good. And so we developed the standards, and so we started with our gazpacho. And making sure that all of the tomatoes come from these Fair Food certified farms. And I just want to add one more thing, because I could go on for half an hour, actually 17 hours. But we're just getting started, because 90% of the tomato farms in Florida are certified, which means that 10% aren't. And then you have a big country here that has a lot of farms that are not certified. And that means we as consumers have a lot of work to do, because our food choices, and I include myself in this, it directly impacts a lot of people in the supply chain. And it's up to us as business people, I think, once to start making different decisions and to pivot.
Thank you
Thank you for
that work. It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
And the soup is available in the back of the room. Okay, so I'll ask just one last question to whoever feels inspired to answer it. As each of you know, because we're friends, I strongly believe that the role of smart women in this world is to build each other up and cheer each other on. And this room is full of the next generation of change makers. So I'm wondering if you might take a moment to share advice for folks that are interested in making sustainability-oriented change.
If we have advice?
Go for it, yeah.
Do it. We are counting on you. We are counting on you, the younger people in this room, to do it, because unfortunately not enough people in our generation and the generation before us, we didn't. And you need to do it. I'm happy to help. Please do it.
On that note, I would say find the people that want to champion you too. So find the people that you can buy them a drink for the free advice instead of paying a consultant $1 bajillion. And then those are the people that you keep in your network that then will maybe want your advice one day, which has happened to me, and I thought that was weird and crazy. But that's the next thing I would recommend. And also somebody that can maybe similarly hear your woes when you have the bad days, so that you're not bringing it home or to your friends or family that don't want to hear about your 18-hour work days anymore. But yeah.
And then I'll just say, and then keep thinking about the why, because there's always someone that will tell you why not, why you shouldn't be, and you don't need that person in your head. So just keep telling yourself the why you want to do it.
Awesome.
Amen.
So we'd love to take your questions, and the panelists are going to stick around afterward if you'd like to connect with them one-on-one as well. So do we have any questions from the room? I see a hand. Yeah, one is coming to you presently. Would you mind sharing your name and which school you're in?
Oh, yeah, my name's Gloria. I'm in the School of International Service, and my question was, you guys mentioned a lot of sustainability practices that your businesses do specifically, but what kind of sustainable mistakes, big companies' mistakes do you see doing that it could be more sustainable or you think could be implemented on a national level?
I find in my industry, people will very quickly source grain or other supplies from large manufacturers around the country that if they just put in a little bit more time to look out local farmers, they're there. And I've seen them there. I've been in meetings where farmers are like, I can make more money growing rye for whiskey than I can for feed, and I want to do it for you. And nobody's willing to take the leap to make that relationship when they can just keep putting on their automatic payment schedule of delivery from Portland of whatever, 2 tons of grain a week or whatever it might be. So that's something I get bummed about.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that in March of 2020, when no grocery stores had any food on the shelves, our shelves were full because our supply chains were short. And if I needed more barbecue sauce, I called up Miles, and he brought it in his arms through the front doors. So curating these local sustainable relationships is sustainable across the board. It means
And it's the same price.
It's the same
sometimes.
price, and higher quality most of the time.
My thing was always packaging. It would drive me bananas. I would have deliveries coming in, and the person, they could tell me, I worked with this one designer who she was based in Texas, and it's like she grew the cotton and it was organically dyed. It was this whole process. Then everything would come and just plastic or just all this stuff, and it was just and I understand. Part of it was that they don't want things to be damaged when they arrive, and so I totally get it. But the packaging always just kind of drove me a little nuts because it just sort of erased half the value of what they just did. So.
That's a great question. I can't stand the hypocrisy. The big companies are the ones that can, if they truly wanted to make change, could make monumental change. And so you'll see companies that will celebrate National Women's Month, and then if you just scratch below the surface, you see that their clothing is manufactured by women who are getting paid a penny in Bangladesh. So is that how you celebrate women, or do you just do an Instagram post with people that look cool in your clothing? And so if these big businesses would truly embrace what it means to make change, I think the world could pivot.
They move the needle.
Do we have any other questions? Yes, please, sir. And if you wouldn't mind, share your name and your school as well. Although you're wearing it on your shirt, so we can assume. Go Kogod.
Hi, yeah, I'm Lukas. I'm in the graduate program Sustainability Management at Kogod, and I have a question specifically for Monica.
Sure.
Sustainability is very complicated, and often we don't have a clear answer to a question. And one example for me is the question about what kind of bottles do we use in a distillery. For example, the conflict between glass bottles and plastic bottles. Glass bottles can be reused, they can be recycled, they need a lot of energy to be recycled. In transportation for longer distance, they will have more GHG emissions. Plastic bottles the same, less GHG emissions in transportation, but usually we only use them for once, and they are directly connected with oil in the production. So how do you decide as an entrepreneur about a conflict like this? At the same time, glass maybe seems to be more luxury for the clients. Maybe the consumers even think it's more sustainable, even it's maybe not the right answer or decision. How do you find a solution for that, and how do you communicate it to the customers?
That's a really good question. Yeah. And sometimes we feel pigeonholed because there are only probably 3 to 4 major manufacturers of both glass and plastic bottles that fit the exact size that are also approvable by the federal government for alcohol. So that's one of those really tough decisions that you make, because they have to be 250 milliliter, 375, 500, or 750 milliliters for packaging. And we went back and forth on this. We went with an American broker, but most of the bottles are still not even made nationally, even though they say American made on the boxes, but the cardboard is American made. So they get you everywhere. So what we did in that case was try to find as many alternative ways to utilize our glass as we could. So both our bartenders and our customers can bring bottles back to us that we then hand to a candle manufacturer. They chop the tops off, and then we reuse them as soy candles and sell them out of our shop. People can also make the candles themselves if they just want us to chop the tops off. But otherwise, that's probably one of the most challenging aspects of our industry, because we also can't legally reuse the glass, and that's a federal requirement. So I can't remove a label, wash the bottle perfectly, and then put the same amount of alcohol back in it. That's a federal law. So we, yes, recycle the glass and hope that it goes to the right place, but I think that requires some probably governmental and structural change. People are still gonna drink, so you can't change that part.
Yet.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions from the internet? Yes, please.
Yes, we have a question from Veronica on the live stream. So to what extent do your companies strive to be leaders within your industries?
All the ways.
I would love the opportunity to be the leader in the soup industry. That's what I'm working towards every day. So, I mean, what's out there right now is not good. And so I would like more consumers eventually. I'm hoping that Soupergirl becomes like you go, and it's obviously, it becomes a verb, or like, can you grab a Soupergirl tonight? That's not a verb, it's a noun. Like Kleenexes instead of tissue. And then therefore the world, I truly believe, and maybe I'm naive, but I have to believe this, that if our company grows to that extent, the impact we can have on the farms and the laborers becomes massive. Because right now I'm a tiny, tiny fish trying to scream from our little mountain that like things need to change. But once we become the leader, then things really start changing. Big time.
Yes, please.
Do any of you, going back to all of this, do you try to change the laws in your businesses? Do you try to, while you're still running amazing businesses, what do you do to get the industries to actually make those changes?
So for the back of the room, the question was, are they trying to engage in policy change? Are they trying to get the laws and the policies changed in order to live the world that we intend for ourselves?
Well, yes, for me, I remember when the last Farm Bill was up and there was a provision about hemp, and I have a t-shirt company that I work with that makes, well, they make other things as well, but they're mostly known for their t-shirts, and everything they make is mostly hemp. There's some organic cotton blended in, but that was like a really big issue, getting the Farm Bill passed because of this one hemp provision that really impacted their business, but also would impact the industry in general, because, if you're using hemp for textiles, it's so much better than cotton in terms of the resources and like how to grow it and soil and just everything. And so there are things that, and the client, I remember, brought it up, and then once he mentioned it, I got involved with it. But then there are other things that I get involved with as well, mostly locally, partly through the chamber, but just partly just through because I was a lawyer beforehand anyway. So things that I watch out for and that I push for. So.
I'm super pumped to let everybody know that the state of Maryland both approved a full-time value-added agriculture specialist to the Department of Agriculture, mostly for the growth of the craft beverage industry and supporting local agriculture, but they also named rye whiskey the state spirit. So yeah, we're super excited about that, also because we make a Maryland rye, but that'll provide funding not just to promote it, but to provide grants to farmers who want to get involved. So yeah, we never realized we'd get involved in politics probably when any of us started our businesses, but yeah, we all ended up having to talk to lobbyists and legislators and be there for sessions, and it can be hard, but it's fun when you get those wins.
And Sarah, when you're not moving refrigerators or sweeping floors?
Yeah, I mean, through the work with the Fair Food Program, we're 100% trying to get voices that are bigger than ours to come to the table, literally trying to convene a summit, because we all know the immigration system, bless you, is broken. The H-2A, is that the temporary? The visa. The visa is so corrupt. So just to give you an example, if someone comes here and works on a farm and they are here legally with one of those visas, they are tied to that farm, which means if that farm
because they sponsor the visa.
Commits whatever,
That person's stuck.
they're stuck. And versus if they're undocumented, they're screwed. Sorry, they have to live in the shadows, and then when immigration services come, sometimes they're locked in a walk-in freezer. So that visa program needs to be changed. There's talk on the Hill of it, but the changes proposed are not the right ones. And it's a crying shame because we have a labor crisis here. We need laborers, and no one should have to live in the shadows. No one should have to be subject to. There was just in December 2021, there was a slavery bust. If you Google it, it's called Bloomin' Onion in the state of Georgia. I think most of those people were here legally. And if you just Google it, it's really sobering and makes you realize, again, that we as consumers need to pay attention to these things. Also, if you Google John Oliver, 3 nights ago, did an amazing piece on the Fair Food Program.
Cool.
Nice.
Google it. It is incredible. He does it in the John Oliver way, and it is incredible press, and will really explain it better than I have, I think.
And listen, we're in an active Farm Bill reauthorization cycle presently. So if anything you've heard today has inspired you, pick up the phone, get involved. This is the moment we get to reshape American agricultural policy. So please do, in between your studying and summer break and all that other good stuff, take a moment to act on the feelings that you're having in this room, please. Do we have any other questions? Yes, I see one right back here. And if you wouldn't mind sharing your name and school, please.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I'm also in the Kogod program for sustainability management, and this was just a follow-up on the H-2A workers. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the certified agriculture worker solution that was being developed for the H-2A program that's been in some of the recent agriculture labor bills, in terms of basically creating more comprehensive contracts for those workers so they're able to stay longer, or is that one of the corrupt solutions that you were referencing?
That's it. It's not the. So having a longer process is fine. The problem is once the people are on the farm, who is going to the farm to check and make sure that the rules are being followed? And that's the crux of the issues, and that's why the Fair Food Program differentiates itself from fair trade. And each one has its pluses and minuses, and I will try to edit, but this was created by the laborers. This program was created by laborers who experienced the abuse and then set the criteria for what is no longer acceptable and set the criteria for how to audit those farms. So there's a 24/7 hotline. So if a farm is certified and there's a complaint, there's a whole procedure. And so these people are about what, the repercussions. And if they lose their certification, they will lose a ton of business from Walmart, Ahold, et cetera. And so, unfortunately, the government programs don't do enough to protect visa holders, regardless of how long they're here.
Got it. Thank you.
We have time for one more. Yes, my friend, please, you get the last word. Or the last question, anyway.
I can talk pretty loud.
I'll repeat it if not.
Okay, sure. My name's Gabby. I'm also from the Sustainability Management Program. I've also worked in sustainable agriculture and food systems, so naturally my question goes to you. And you've done some amazing work in terms of the sourcing of your products, and also we talked a lot about the packaging. But have you had any success in terms of the distribution of your products to maybe food insecure neighborhoods or underrepresented neighborhoods?
Yes, thank you. Great question. So during COVID, again, one of the things that we realized was that a lot of people were able to work from home, and there was a safety net. People were literally mailed checks. The government mailed people money. And what we quickly realized was that people who were farming the food or serving the food, who are here living in the shadows, had zero safety net. And we teamed up with a number of community nonprofit organizations that focused specifically on that community. People, it was one of many times when I cried, but pulling up in the Soupergirl van at one of the distribution spots with the DC Food Project, that was founded by some moms who at one point, this was before COVID, saw a teacher putting granola bars in one of the students' bags because realized the child wasn't going to have enough food over the weekend because their school was closed over the weekend, so that they jumped into action during COVID and helped the families in these schools who didn't have access to any sort of safety net, and the desperation of these people and the gratitude they had because they were down to cups of ramen. It was a nightmare. So yes, that is our focus is food justice and shining a light on those in our world who are working so hard to feed us, and they deserve justice, they deserve respect, they deserve fair treatment, they deserve fair wages, they deserve everything that you take for granted every day you wake up in Washington, D.C. I become so preachy. It's really obnoxious, but it's a great question. And I just hope people, we really need to think about how our food gets to our plate and not just the buzzwords of organic. And we need to think about the humans involved in that supply chain.
Can I just make a
yes,
plug
please.
for Arcadia while we're on
yes.
So one of the organizations I work with, I volunteer. I'm a longtime volunteer, and I'm on the board of. It's called Arcadia Center for Sustainable Agriculture, and it's based in It's in Alexandria, but it's the Fairfax County part of Alexandria. But they have a mobile market that brings food out to Ward 7 and 8 and other food deserts in DC, as well as markets that we do along the Route 1 corridor running south. In that part of Virginia. And we also have a farm education program that brings kids out to the farm to talk about healthy eating and introduce them to all of those sorts of things. And so that's just a really great local organization that you could become involved with or just learn more about. So, yeah. Oh, and it started because the founder of the farm owns a restaurant, and he wanted to ensure his food supply, and then was thinking about how the farmers are treated, how the folks on the farm are treated, what's going into it. And so he wanted it as a supply for his own restaurants, and then it grew into this other thing.
NRG, right?
Yeah, it's Michael Babin.
It's Michael Babin, right. And Pamela Hess's,
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I guess I'd like to conclude by thanking Dean Marchick for creating this speaker series and giving us this stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. And of course, these brilliant change makers for doing the work and sharing their stories with us. So thank you for being here. And again, we'll stay put if you'd like to come up and ask questions one-on-one.
Thank you, Danielle.
Happy birthday.
Thank you, Danielle. Thank you, everybody.